This podcast is proudly sponsored by Gyro Drilling. They provide world-class drilling solutions for all types of projects. They specialise in auger, air core and RC drilling. Head to the team at Gyro Drilling for all your mining needs and see how they can help you with your upcoming project. Hello, I'm Ben Kostrich and this is the Market Bull Podcast. As this podcast grows, every subscriber helps. From those of you who watch this on YouTube or to those that listen on Spotify and Apple, every follower helps. If you do this one favour and hit follow on whatever platform you find us on, I promise I will continue to look and find fascinating people across the world and bring their perspectives to you. Thank you and enjoy this episode. So hello, I'm Ben Kostrich and this is the Market Bull Podcast. Joining me in the studio today is George Bauk, the Executive Chairman of Thunderbird Resources, formerly known as Valor Resources. The code is THB. I last spoke with him over 14 months ago. We're having a little laugh about it before we started, and I've got him back in the room. It's changed a lot, and so is the mission of the company and everything. So welcome back, George.
Yeah, no, thanks, Ben. It has been a while, and good to see that your business is thriving and progressing to video as well. So
yeah, it's the form podcasting, vodcasting. I don't know where the medium lies, but we're not talking about that today. We're talking all about Thunderbird. And again, I'll take the words out of your mouth. Thunderbirds are all go in that regard for those, but it's focused on uranium exploration in Canada. But before we go into all that, just remind listeners just about yourself, your history, your background, your exposure to mining, and then how you've sort of been integrated into Thunderbird Resources.
Yeah, look, no problems at all. My career in the mining industry actually started back in 1990 by pure luck and coincidence. I went in and joined a company called Thai West, which was a mineral sands, fully vertically integrated, which, you go back 30 odd years ago and you think that's the way we're all going to be, and we sort of haven't progressed as much as I may have seen when I was in my early 20s. Worked at my first FIFO job was 92 at a company called Otakumpu, which then ended up being Western Areas, which is now IGO took over Western Areas. Spent 10 years at Western Mining, spent a lot of the time in the nickel business unit, and at the back end I actually had a role of heading up all the logistics across the whole company, which included Olympic Dam. So probably in the early 2000s was my first ever exposure to uranium, and that was through the transportation of uranium out of Roxby Downs. So sort of got some interesting insights into the industry at that point in time. After I left Western Mining, I went into the small cap space and began there in about 2004. And so, 20 years on, having lived in the small cap, looking for that discovery, if you like, and worked in many commodities, done uranium a few times. So I've explored for it in Tanzania, the US, Australia, and Canada. So, 4 countries around the world. Spent a lot of time in rare earths, critical minerals, lithium, graphite, etc. So had a really deep background in the whole critical minerals space, and then spent 10 years at Northern Minerals taking a greenfield exploration play all the way through to production with heavy rare earths. So that was a great time of actually seeing the whole process through, if you like. So when I left Northern Minerals, I had the opportunity present when there was a transaction to put the uranium assets into the then Valor Resources back in the end of 2020. And so that was consummated in February 2021. Over the last 3 years, we wandered into copper in Peru. We've done a deal on that transaction last year on that project with Phytar Resources. Yep. And so with coming back and bringing the company back to Canada, that's what brought about the renaming of the company to Thunderbird.
Okay.
So, it's I've had 30 years experience in this industry, as I said, 20 in the small caps. So I feel I've got a really good background in being part of the Thunderbird stories going forward.
I mean, you would have seen all the booms and busts in commodity cycles, especially uranium, given 20 years of being in that. There's been some incredible fluctuations in that commodity or utility, and not to mention lithium and some of the others. But you said its focus now is realigned on Canadian uranium exploration. So can you talk us through a little bit about where the focus is within Canada, and I guess some of the reasons behind, you just said realigning the name or changing the name, and why has all that sort of stuff come into focus?
Yeah, so look, we've had this asset package in 21 that we started. We've drilled and we've advanced a lot of these projects. You talk about booms and busts. You go through these cycles where there's moments where people are really excited about a certain commodity. You can raise money, good price, low dilution for shareholders. And then you have other moments in the cycle where absolutely no interest, struggling to raise money and so forth. So, with a great exploration team, when you've got a land package, you've got to explore for what's on the ground, if you like. So you naturally try to focus on your commodity that your shareholders are aligned and focused on, if you like. But, we had this great package in Canada, in Peru, and we really took that to as far as we could. And then we really needed to, as the next bit of investment, we thought the best way to do that is to retain interest in the project in a different way and stop the funding into that and focus in Canada. Late last year, we did a deal with some lithium projects in Ontario. And as part of that transaction and really the departure from Peru, we felt it was time for the company to be refreshed and new name, new focus, new direction and so forth. So through many different ways, we came up with the name Thunderbird. If you look at the colour scheme, it's Canadian red. So the colours are very much representing where our key and core focuses are in Canada, if you like. So subtle, but gives people the flavour of who we are, if you like. And it's, the real core assets are in the basin.
Yeah, well, that's where we'll drill straight into now, which is the Athabasca Basin and, I guess, the uranium play within that. So if you're painting the picture for those that probably would have heard of the Athabasca Basin and sort of some of the success stories around it and surrounding Canada, talk us through the history, a little bit about the packages you guys have got there and, I guess, some of the excitement from the exploration point of view for you guys.
Yeah, look, it's quite interesting. We're doing a bit of a sort of looking at our history over the last 4 years, if you like, and one of our directors recently presented some journeys of Thunderbird, and if you go back and have a look at the map of the state of the basin today, in terms of pegged, the basin is pretty much pegged. So there's very little room apart from certain areas. But, if you had a look at the map, you'll see there's nothing there left for anyone. If you go back to 2020, only 4 years ago, the basin probably was only pegged 40%, 35%. So you had a lot of the basin open. So this was where just before we've seen the recent rebirth and the energisation of this whole uranium wave, the basin was open for business. It was, and it's frightening when you have a look at it on the map. That really shows. Now, what I try to explain to people with that 2020 to 2024 was the group of people that put this package together. They had a very, very open area to stake ground. So this wasn't picking up whatever's left around the fringes, if you like. So when you go and start to unpack our projects, these are projects that have been picked up for real geological reasons. So, they have been selected on, either what's on the property or neurology or key features within the basin. So it's a really interesting point to note of, I suppose, when these assets were picked and put together. There's one of them that we actually pegged ourselves. So as part of our journey, we actually identified an area that had very little ground staked, and we thought, went through open files and records, and we picked up a project and we slowly built it over 2 years. So if you went through our ASX announcements, you'll see that we picked up one part of the project and we slowly added to it. We had to acquire bits towards the end with other people staking around us. And we formed this great package that literally we staked. You fundamentally can't do that today. It's just been totally pegged.
So over a 4-year period, it's completely sort of, the opportunities have almost evaporated.
Yeah, you've got to do deals with companies, 100%.
Interesting. So, how did that all sort of come under the radar then, given that, 2020, going through COVID, there was a lot of other sort of distractions in that regard. How did you guys have the foresight to go 40% of this is only pegged? Yeah,
look, I'd love to take the credit for it, but I was actually I was asked to come and put it together in terms of bring the deal and the company together and so forth and take it through the ASX, etc. So I wasn't involved in putting together the package. It was shown to me and said, would you come in and run it? So the guys that put it together, they could see, as part of the thematics and looking forward rather than being in the middle of a wave, they saw that uranium's, the time will come again. And they couldn't be any more right. I mean, it's nice to have that under, the price is now, just knocking on $90 a pound, broke through 100. But it's the reduced noise around all the people that were against uranium globally that you're not seeing anymore, that people are starting to, I suppose, understand uranium more and see it's actually part of the total clean energy package going forward. So, there's no one solution, one size fits all, but I think a lot of people are recognising that uranium plays a part. You've got changes in the technologies with the small modular reactors, and all the modernisation of all the nuclear reactors around the world have come a long way since the early ones. And then you've had the geopolitical issues, which have put another layer of pressure on people looking at supply chains, which you mentioned COVID before. COVID lit up the board when people went, wow, supply chains are really obvious now, and we've got to be really careful and understand our supply chains better rather than just expecting things to rock up to our door. So when you add all those things together, it's a perfect storm for uranium. And we're in a great position of the foresight of this package being put together in one of the leading places in the world to do business, and it's the highest grade uranium in the world.
Yeah, no, the uranium flip and almost appreciation for it, I sort of say coal's really taken the hatred away from uranium. Uranium is now part of that energy mix. There's a lot of the fears surrounding that and emotion surrounding that utility and commodity just dissipated, and that's really where the future is going. And the uranium price has definitely helped sort of add on that next exploration front, because reality, there hasn't been much new discoveries. And that goes to then your plans with the packages and the areas that you have surrounding. I mean, what sort of steps or what plans have you guys got, given that there's also, seasonality components, but you're sort of going into a bit of a better time from a Canadian point of view for exploration? Talk us through what's really being planned to accelerate and, I guess, start the exploration process, or continue it, rather.
Yeah, so look, we've got 4 key projects in the basin, and by priority and ranking, Hidden Bay, Cluff Lake, Surprise Creek and Hook Lake. They're our 4 projects in order, if you like, sitting at various parts of the basin. If I go through each one and sort of answer those
please.
questions, if you like, Ben. So when you look at Hidden Bay, we've done ground-based work, we've flown airbornes, we've reviewed historical data, and we've compiled all that together to basically have drill-ready targets. We've also got drill permits in place. So all of that's done, and now it's about getting a rig on site and start testing and drilling our key targets. And, what we're super excited about the Hidden Bay as our number one project is it's right on the unconformity. We've mapped conductors, faults and folds. We've got seriously large gravity lows. And all of those elements come together, really create a seriously exciting project. Whilst it doesn't have geochem on surface, we use radon as part of capturing gases that from the decay chain of uranium, and that's given us some overlays of where our key targets are, if you like. If you have a look at that and you look at, okay, what has similar analogies of what you've got there to other success stories in the basin, and, on that contact to the south of us, you've got GMZ, which was a recent discovery by 92 Energy, which was just recently taken over by Athabasca. So they've got a lot of the ingredients, or, we've got a lot of ingredients that they saw as part of their discovery. And the one everyone talks about is Arrow's, the Arrow deposit, which was only discovered 10 years ago. So, in a lot of ways, that's a recent discovery. And that's got a lot of signatures. We're going back and having a look at what did the Arrow deposit look like before we actually drilled, before they drilled it. And the amazing thing was, that was only about 12 years ago when they started drilling that deposit. And, that is a serious world-class deposit when you're talking 200 plus million pounds at 4.3%. And you convert that to gold equivalent, that's just an unbelievable deposit. $3.1 billion EBITDA per annum. It is just a phenomenal, the economics are just unbelievable. So all those things come together and provide us the excitement. So it's all about getting drilling. So that's our next project. What we've got to do at Hidden Bay is really get on the ground, 2,400 metre program, and start testing the high priority targets. And number 2 project is Cluff Lake. So that's on the western side of the basin. It's actually located within 7 kilometres of the historic Cluff Lake mine, and that's owned by Urano, with a Riva. That historically, I think it closed in the 80s. That mined 62.5 million pounds of 0.92% uranium at surface. So that was, a phenomenal project of its time, and would still make outstanding money today based on being at surface and those grades and the price of uranium. So we're 7 kilometres along strike from that. Again, we've run a number of airborne geophysical surveys over that property. We've done reconnaissance work. We've done mapping. There's historical activities that have happened on that project. And then to the south, within our Cluff Lake project, we're also 2 kilometres from the boundary of our project is 2 kilometres from the Shea Creek deposit, which is a project owned 50-50 by UEC and Urano. And that's got about 100 plus million pounds of uranium at 1.3%. Now, that's quite deep, that project, so it's approximately 800 metres deep. And again, we're a long strike from that. Last year, we used a group called Thunderbird Resources, which is a WA-based company run by Barry Bourne, which they have about 12 geophysicists in their group. And one of the key guys in their group for us is a guy by the name of Rob Black. Rob was born in Flin Flon. He worked for Cameco, grew up learning and
just living, breathing uranium.
In the basin.
Yeah.
Right. Came to Australia as part of Cameco coming to Western Australia and never went home. I think he just became an Australian citizen just recently. So Rob's now an Aussie. If you look at the work that Rob's done with all the surveys and all the information he's got, one of the really big breakthroughs he made last year was that the interpretation he's made on the basement contact is that our targets are sitting between 50 to 150 metres depth. So when you look at the project that's about 4 kilometres from where our key targets are, that's at 800 metres deep. We're talking about 50 to 150. So shallower holes, lower cost of discovery, and more palatable for a small cap company as opposed to putting in a 1 kilometre hole looking for an 800 metre target, which is a lot harder to hit at depth versus shallow. So that really caught our attention last year. We've got drill permits on that project. We're advanced on First Nation agreements both at Cluff Lake and Hidden Bay. So a lot of work done on that front as well, from licence to operate, business, etc. So, Cluff Lake's super exciting. Again, drill ready. 2,500 metre program has been designed. We're ready to go there. Both those projects can actually be drilled any time of the year. The only time you can't drill in the basin in certain parts. Well, no, probably the biggest thing to be mindful of is the shoulders of winter. When it's freezing up, you sort of got to avoid that time, and when it's thawing out, when you have issues with water and stuff like that. But when it's totally frozen, sometimes that can be the best time to drill versus in the summer, depending where you are and certain other topographic features, if you like. The third project is Surprise Creek. Now, I was talking to you before we come on about that we staked that property ourselves. That's in the Uranium City area in the northwest corner of the basin. It's the first place that any production came out of uranium out of the basin, right? It was a lot lower grade than some of the other areas. There's been very little airborne geophysics done in the area up until recently. On that project, we have got a historical hit that was drilled in 1968, right? Before I was born, believe it or not, Ben. Not far before, but before I was born, so 56 years ago. And the historical hit was 2.1 metres at 4.37% U308 from 57 metres. So shallow. We've gone on ground. The guys have had a look at this this strike of that particular drilling, and we've identified at least a 500 metre strike of that particular area. There's a lot of geochem, so we're getting multiple percents of U308 on surface. There's also copper associated with that project up in that area, and we're trying to uncover and understand the copper more. And so that project needs an airborne survey, so we're getting quotes for that at the moment, and that will really give us another layer of information that's not there, and hopefully get us to better understand the drilling that was done, and what the potential and maybe where we should be drilling around that area. But that's an outstanding project that's got known mineralisation in drill holes that hasn't been touched for 56 years. That was open ground in 2021. So we staked it.
That's the scary bit, isn't it? Yeah.
And Ben, we staked it, we expanded it. So, we were slowly, it wasn't like we went in and grabbed the whole lot in one hit. We grabbed a bit, added to it, and we weren't getting people midnight staking around us, if you like. And then now there's no area around it because everyone's gone into the basin over the last 12 months and just picked up any vacant ground. If you have a look at the shapes of our Cluff Lake project, we actually dropped a bit of ground that was picked up. We, bang, gone. So it's a really hot area to be in. And then we've got Hook Lake, which was a project that came in as part of the transaction. Hook Lake is in joint venture with Sky Harbour Resources, which is a TSX-listed company. They're one of the large landowners in the basin, been there for a long time. And so we now recently earned our 80% interest in the project. That's had some super exciting high-grade mineralisation in trenches on surface, going up to nearly 60% U3O8 in trenches. So we drilled underneath that. We did get a hit of uranium, but an area that we've got a lot more work to do to go back there, if you like. They've got these things, the Taberner faults, which are quite important features, which run north-south. If you take them straight north of where the S zone is, which is where I was mentioning before, at the contact, that's where you've had 92 Energy's GMZ discovery, and you've had base loads, AK, IIO, whatever they call it, discovery. So that's an area which we've got huge, we've flown airborne there as well, so we've done a lot of work on the ground. The other exciting thing about the basin is that in terms of the ministry, they actually allow you to accumulate your expenditure. So we did a drill program back in 2022. You calculate your costs, you divide it by your holding costs, and we've actually got good standing on that property till I think 2039. So instead of you do a lot of work and it goes, yep, tick, you've made the threshold expenditure for that year, then you've got to keep doing it every year. In Saskatchewan, you actually get this accumulation process. So you get the ability to do a big program and you can hold the ground for a lot longer. So people that work the ground get to benefit from keeping the ground.
Well, that's outlined, in depth, the 4 projects.
Yep.
And that's all
Sorry.
the uranium. No, it's perfect. And from the sounds of that, the drilling program, at least for the first 3 Hidden Bay and Cluff Lake, that's somewhat happening in the coming months or year. What's the timeline? Or is it currently operating? What's going through there?
So the key task we've got now is funding. So once we develop our structure of how we're going to fund the company, we've got some optionality of how we're going to do that.
Yeah.
Once we get that, then we'll be out drilling. So it's always difficult to sort of give listeners and shareholders of we plan to do it X. But once we get those things done, we can get on the ground straight away. We've got not only we've got a small team in house, but we utilise DeRouge Consulting, who are a well-known Canadian-based geological survey group who we've got a great relationship over the last 3 to 4 years. And so we will use them in conjunction with our guys to do the logistics and run the program.
Interesting. And you're saying, some of them more so recent, I guess, information on what's been happening in the drill one, but the one where you said hasn't had anything over 56 years. That's quite a period of time where nothing's happened, considering it was one of the first regions of the Athabasca Basin that was extracted. That sort of piqued my interest, but again, from a priority point of view, you guys have clearly looked at which one is in the best interest of the company progressing, and that's before we even talk about the lithium components as well that are on the side. So is the lithium plays also within these area packages, or is that another set of projects and operations, or from regards of an exploration company, the focus is on uranium at the moment, and then as you sort of get that underway, you can then start really advancing some of the lithium stuff as well?
Yeah, so first point there, Ben, the Surprise Creek 1968 hit is super exciting.
Surprise Creek, that's right, yeah.
But when we when we go through a process, and it was actually led by Barry Bourne and his team, when the guys have got a pretty structured approach to ranking projects. So our technical team will go through and look at a whole host of aspects associated with the project that will then give a number at the end of it to say that's the number for that project, for that one, and then that comes up with a ranking system. Otherwise, if you don't follow a structured approach, you might end up where you get the exciting eyes go, look at that sexy number, let's go.
Exactly.
And away, next minute you're doing that, and then you think, hold on a second, there's other reasons. And it could be neurology, it could be a whole host of things. But, at the moment with a very structured approach, Surprise Creek's number 3. But again, you do that year on year, and those things can change. I mean, you get an intersection or something happens, and next minute Surprise Creek could be number 1. But that's that point. When you go on to your next point about lithium, so yeah, we worked on that for a period last year, and uranium was not a sexy thing in the marketplace. So people weren't really interested to raise money, and it was a very slow, low period in the uranium space. And as you know, when you start seeing the run of any commodity, there's usually the focus of capital might go into producers or near production, or it looks at various levels of risk, etc. So it takes a while sometimes to come down to
the
early explorers and so forth. And so we had to look at what other opportunities exist, and we spent a bit of time evaluating some lithium projects last year, and later in the year we were presented a project in Ontario, Canada, so north of Toronto. And so we went and did some DD and worked through that project, and we came up with these option agreements. We own one of the projects, and we have option agreements on another one, and about to finalise an option agreement on the third one. Fraser Lake's the centrepiece, if you like. It's got an outcrop pegmatite with known lithium in the pegmatites. We've got a trench. It now needs to be delineated better, so we've got a work program to get on the ground there in about a month's time and unpack the pegmatite that has got us excited in the particular area. The Thunder Bay region is a known area for lithium deposits, and probably not as well known and as prestigious as James Bay, but it's got a lot of merit. It's got companies that are looking to do a lot of things, including downstream processing in the Thunder Bay region and the city. So we've got to get on site, unpack that, and then put a very small program there to determine whether or not we proceed with that project, because we've got an option to acquire that 100%. We have to make that decision by 30 September. So we've got a chance between now and then to do due diligence, and it's in our interest, and what we want to do is, given that it's a reasonable size price, we want to do some drilling there to give us the confidence, that's a great project, let's go with it.
Yeah.
We acquired a project called Jezelenko, which many people think I named it, given I'm a mad Carlton supporter, but it had nothing to do with that. Whether or not someone named it to get me interested is another thing. But so that's a package in its own right, so we own that 100%, and we've got we'll be working through that now in terms of the prospectivity, but our real focus is to time is ticking, so we really need to work out if Fraser Lake's a go, no-go, if you like, and that decision will be made 30 September.
Okay, so there's a bit happening there as well, but as you can, from the conversation so far, a lot of it is focused on the uranium. And you mentioned earlier about Saskatchewan. I'm terrible at saying it and even reading it. Then that's ranked quite highly from a business and, I guess, mining jurisdiction point of view. Can you talk us through a little bit about why that is the case? You see a ranking and you go, oh, fantastic, they're ranked in the top, I want to say 5, is it? It's up there.
Top 3.
Top 3, there we go. I was going to say 3. I mean, what are some of the reasons from someone that's never heard of it and gone, why are they so great? What do they really help with mining explorers and really just the mining scene with getting projects and resources up and about?
Yeah, so you've got mining happening in the region, and when you hone in on uranium, you've got uranium producers in the basin. So there's production facilities. You've got underground mines. Cameco is based in Saskatoon. So you've got, one of the biggest companies in the world from a vertically integrated perspective in the uranium sector is based there. First Nations have been interacting with uranium from an explorer, from a local community, and, they've been active in employment and many other facets. So, you've got an engaged society, if you like, communities around the projects. the government systems are really useful and really good, and from what we've seen, and we've spent a few years in the basin now, I mentioned before about the accumulated approach associated with good standing, really good systems, reporting. They're very helpful. You've got good labs up there, and obviously understand how to handle uranium. They've got another thing called a deficiency deposit system up there, which if you don't meet your expenditure, you can actually put cash down. So if you're $100,000 short on your commitments on a project, you make a $100,000 cash payment. When you've spent all your money for the next year's standing plus how much you put down for your deposit, you get that money back. So it's not a penalty payment. It's for a better word, a bond. And if you happen not to spend the money, I think it's 3 years in a row you can do a deficiency deposit, but come the fourth year you can't just keep putting cash down. You've actually got to work the ground. So there's a lot of features like that in terms of when you peg the ground, you get title within 24 hours. Pegging's a very straightforward system to go online. You get, as I said, you get that back in a short period of time. Your permitting happens. Everyone talks around the sort of 4-month mark. By the time you go through and you put your application in, you've obviously got to do a community consultation. So you go through those processes and you get your permit granted. I think our last one was for 3 years. And there's a fair bit of flexibility within the permit of what you can do. So it's not like you have to totally identify the 3 holes you're going to drill and you've got to go back. So there's a lot of really good aspects associated with doing business in Saskatchewan, with particular reference to uranium, is our experience, if you like. So I can see why it's highly ranked. We feel very comfortable, and the systems are straightforward.
And you were saying you have a few team members, or at least some consultants there, but from the broader aspect of who's on the team alongside you from a board, and even just some of the geos and other people that come in and out, I mean, who's part of the Thunderbird Resources team? Yeah,
so look, to go through the board to start with, and we're really we're a working board, if you like, in terms of it's a 3-person board, but each delivers a lot. We have we're on weekly Zoom calls to get updates and input and all the rest of it. So it's not like it's just monthly board meetings, etc. So everyone rolls their sleeves up. Gary Billingsley's our non-executive director. I've known Gary for about 18 years, met him in the rare earth industry back in 2006, and I've kept in touch with Gary over that journey. Gary lives in Saskatoon, and so when this came about, you've got to remember we were putting this together right in the heart of COVID.
Yeah.
So our ability to get on ground, and that was very complex. So I recall ringing Gary saying, look, you'd be a real critical part, both your experience and all that, but the fact that you live in country, that we've just got better accessibility and can do things on the ground with Gary's guidance and on-ground presence, if you like. So he's been a valuable member. Gary's a geologist. He worked in some of the mines that operated a long time ago, and I know if he listens to this podcast, he'll be upset if I start mentioning periods where he worked in the mines, because it might give away his age. But Gary's he's just a wealth of knowledge. He understands the history of Saskatchewan, and that's gone through interesting political periods, gone into more socialist state times when they took everything off the owners, and that's how Cameco was formed, but that's a long story.
Yeah, that's a whole other podcast in itself.
Exactly right.
Sounds, yeah.
And then we've got Robin Wilson. Robin's again another geologist. Robin and I actually worked together at Northern Minerals, so we go back to 2010, and Robin led the team that discovered the Browns Range project up in the Kimberleys. Really interesting when you start having planned views of the Arrow deposit. The first thing Robin and I looked at when we were going about looking at that recently was, geez, that looks like Wolverine, which is the deposit we found up at Browns Range. Strike length, geometry, so it gives you a little bit of a better visual of what you're looking for, if you like. And I think we sometimes do ourselves disservice when we say that these uranium projects in the Athabasca Basin are small. They're probably not as small as what we think they are. If you start looking at the geometry of Arrow, I think it's about somewhere between 600 and 800 metres in strike, 800 metres, I think, deep, and about 20 metres wide. So they're not tiny. No. So, they're bodies that you should be able to find if you're on the right and in the right areas, etc. So Robin's got he's got a great history track record. He's been involved with with Thunderbird for a good 3 years now. Been on the board for about 12, 18 months. We've then also got a young guy, Charlie. Charlie's been with us, Varun, he's been with us for a couple of years, and he's gone and done a lot of work up in the basin last year. Over the last couple of years back, he's heading up there in a couple of weeks' time to start on the ground work. And then we support those guys with Derouge, and basically we have one guy usually seconded for most of the year. So he's based in Edmonton, great background. Then we've got the senior guys at Derouge who provide technical support, logistics support, so they're great on-the-ground people. Terra Resources, so Barry Bourne's a long geophysicist in terms of with Rio, Barrick, etc. Huge amount of experience. Rob Black, who worked for Cameco. Michelle Chard, who does all our database management, which is really critical. I mean, we should never forget that. That works as important when you... a lot of this stuff hasn't been digitised. So,
well, I was going to say it's going through sort of archives of a library, which sounds a bit weird to say out loud.
Yeah, look, and Michelle's, she's been pulling her hair out at times trying to, get all the details for putting each, be it a geochem result or a drilling result, trying to put all that together then to provide that 3D and better
visualisation of it,
rich information is huge. And I don't think people realise the opportunity there when you don't have that immediate, all the digitised information, etc. So that's sort of the main group around the team. So, we'll have 7 to 10 people on a call every week that contribute from a geological perspective, and others that contribute in other ways. But it's a nimble team. It fluctuates because they're not all full-time employees that are burning a monthly hole in the pocket. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but you can flex with different times in markets, if you like, but really, really strong focused geological team.
Good to hear. I think the buzz of uranium really gives itself a good opportunity, and that's where we're seeing the drive for renewables, and of course uranium is part of that, adds into it. So looking forward over the next 12 months, I like to sort of say, what can we expect? What can we see coming from Thunderbird Resources over this next period of time?
Yeah, look, as early as the 19th of May, Robin and I start heading around the basin and getting onto the site on each project. So we'll be the second half of May. We'll be at each of our projects. So we'll try to use modern technology and do the odd little snippet and put it on socials, if you like, to show that we're on the ground. The colour of my beard shows that I'm not the most social in terms of using social media, but we'll do better than we've done before to just update people on where we are. And it's really about getting the company financially positioned to then do the programs that I outlined before. That, what's staring us right in the face is we've got to drill Hidden Bay, we've got to drill Cluff Lake, we've got to do the work to get Surprise Creek up to being drill ready. There's copper in the corner of Surprise Creek, which we didn't talk about, which has got huge upsides. People should just look at the presentation on that. And then we've got to get back to Hook Lake, and Hook Lake's got an abundance of targets that we've just got to do more work on. And then we've also got some survey results that should come out soon that we flew over Cluff Lake to give us a lot better targeting. And they were surveys that were flown over Shea Creek. So I think there's a lot of learnings on that. So once we get up and running, it's all about watch this space, and we're going to be like everyone else, going looking for that discovery hole to really make us a game changer. And when you're a kid and you look up to your father, or you want to be someone, you look at next gen and geez, we'd love to be a next gen. And if people are looking for multiples on investment, you look at that company and you can see that being in the basin, there's a reward for high-risk capital going into the basin.
Yeah. No, there's a lot happening. And, I mean, the next question, you said you're going to be posting a bit on socials, so that means that, of course, you can follow Thunderbird Resources on socials. But for those investors, listeners, whoever's out there that's interested in potentially reaching out or following the company, where can they go and who can they reach out to ask potential questions? Yeah,
look, I mean, on the bottom of all our announcements, and first and foremost, thunderbirdresources.com. Go to the website. There's on the front page you can join the mailing list so that you can get information from the company. There's also we're on LinkedIn and other social areas where you can connect, and there's email addresses there where you can reach out and get questions answered from myself or others in the company. We can get back to you if you like. So the accessibility is there if people are willing to want to ask, and if they want a quick small presentation or anything like that, we're open to talking to current and future investors.
Yeah, the whole landscape of communication with shareholders has, I can imagine, over your time, completely shifted from now you just have to be so available to answer them and actually have, great conversations with potential and current shareholders. But we've covered a lot. I hope I don't have to wait another 14 months to get you back in the chair because a lot happens over that period of time. But yeah, thank you so much, George, for speaking on the show today.
No worries. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks for listening to the Market Bull podcast. Please remember that the topics and stocks discussed in this podcast are not financial advice. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to like, share, and follow. You can follow the Market Bull on all our socials and keep up to date with global market insights.